in about 1979, I think, after I'd only been in the Senate 2 or maybe 3 years, there was a local newspaper called the Willamette Bridge, as opposed to the Willamette Week, and it was sort of the real deal. The Willamette Week figured it out fairly early that I read once they'd done a poll and found out that 39% of the readers were Republicans, people who worked downtown in the financial community. So the Willamette Week started bouncing back and forth between progressive and regressive articles and positions, but the Willamette Bridge was a grassroots environmental civil rights true deal. That was very small, belonged to a guy, and he got tired, and he announced that he was going to close it or sell it. Well, the people who were printing it for him, Tom and Marcia Pry, who had a little newspaper in Selwood called the Selwood Bee, came to me and said, "We want you to take over that newspaper. We'll print it for a while for free while you go out and establish the advertising base to keep it going, because it's a valuable community asset and because we like getting paid for printing it." I thought about that real hard for a few days. In the midst of my I'd figured it out by then that I was never going to get any kind of play in the mainstream media. I was just too far to the left. I was too much like Bernie Sanders. And I was too strong an environmentalist, and they didn't like me. But I thought, if I got my own newspaper, woo-hoo-hoo. Well, as I thought about it, my late wife decided to go up to her home area where her sister was putting on a little recital for her gymnastics school that she had up there, and left me to my own devices for the weekend. Well, I went over to my good friend George and Betty Barton's, and had a few drinks with them. And then when I left there, I made the big mistake and didn't go home. I went downtown to a rough bar called Mary's Club, right by the Benson Hotel, and had a few more drinks. And it was also, by the way, had topless dancers. Well, by the time I walked out of there, I was pretty much stunned by the alcohol. Well, I was standing out there leaning up against the building, thinking, now, what am I going to do next? I can't drive home. And a patrol car eases up right in front of me, and I roll the window down. It says, "What are you doing?" And I says, "Well, I'm just standing here." "That's legal." Well, that flunked the attitude test. They stopped their patrol car and got out and came over and handcuffed me. Well, they asked me, "Where's your car?" And I says something very evasive, because there was some case law that said you could arrest somebody for DUI even though they weren't in their car if it was obvious you were about to drive and you were obviously drunk. So I passed that test, but they took me in anyway. And they used a law that I, with all my great wisdom as a lawyer and chairman of the Judiciary Committee and blah, 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 didn't know. And that is, there's something called a civil hold. If the cops think that you're a danger to yourself because of visible intoxication, they can take you in for your protection. So they took me in. I called my buddy and former law partner, and he came downtown and got me. And I refused to sign anything, and the Republicans and the Oregonian never found out that had happened. But that's the other time that I had too much to drink. And when I sobered up, I realized that I was in the process of making the decision. I couldn't buy that newspaper. I realized that between trying to practice law, be a state senator, and a married man, that something was going to give, and it would probably be my marriage. And I did not want to give up my marriage and my role as an active father, parent. So I told Tom and Marcia, I just can't do it. I can only spread myself so thin, so that in a way that getting drunk that night helped me work through a difficult decision. Not that I'm advocating for that as a prophylactic, but it worked out. I didn't get in any trouble about it. Judy wasn't real happy, and I never got exposed for having been picked up by the cops. That's the only time I've ever had handcuffs put on me, the only time I've ever been taken into custody, in spite of the fact that I demonstrated many times against the Vietnam War. So those are my two confessions about excessive drinking. While I've been thinking about this, I've thought of a third, but it's not very interesting and not much happened. But that's it. I was not somebody that went downtown and got drunk all the time, and I have that's the end of that. Confession is good for the soul, number 2.